insights in this regard. And once again, I welcome all the dignitaries to this platform to enlighten our students and have a wonderful discussion using this platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Patnaik. Thanks a lot for introducing the school and our technology business incubator in such a beautiful manner. Thank you, sir. So to begin with, the topic of today's KweetTalk, rebooting HR, the talent molting in the era of new normal. So as we believe that change is the only constant thing that happens in our life, though we refuse to believe it, but in last 6 to 8 months has nothing but a living legend to prove that yes, change is something which we have to accept. And biotechnology, as already told, it's be it in academia or industry, is a laboratory-based science. And with this COVID-19 pandemic, industry as well as academia both have been reduced to cut working hours, cutting active working professionals, and a lot of restrictions have been imposed. With or without acceptance, we have to abide by the rules and regulations. So with the current scenario, this new working from home has become a new norm, and especially in this field, where laboratory and the bench work is pretty crucial. And on the other hand, human resource, which plays a very, very important role in designing the framework of any industry and designing how the industry will function. So at this point, we believe that they must be facing some difficulties or some crucial issues in managing the industries, managing the human resource, keeping their morale high. And also the students who soon will be in the real world to join these industries must be thinking how to keep pace with the current scenario, how to mold themselves so that they can be aligned with the industries. Because in last 1 year, a lot of things have been changed. So a lot of new guidelines have come into place, a lot of restrictions have come into place. So basically, now we are in a gap where the students and the industry, basically academia, industry, the government regulations, they need to be aligned up and they need to they need to cooperate to come into a plausible solutions. So today, basically at this beautiful afternoon, we have gathered here to listen the views of some bioindustry stalwarts, how they think, how they organize, how they plan the bioindustry at present, and definitely industries might have been incurred some losses during these COVID-19 pandemic time, how they intend to recover those things. And for the information of speakers, sir, in the audience, we have primarily students who are the final year of their courses. We have startups, which are incubated in our technology business incubator, and few corporates. So that's the audience. So with this context, I would like to invite our first speaker of the day, Mr. Dev Tripathi, to present his view. Mr. Tripathi has a master's in personal management and industrial relationships. Mr. Tripathi has always remained engaged in aligning HR and improving their talent strategies to enhance the business performance. Before joining to his current occupation, he was working in companies like Edico, SR Group, Electrolux, and currently is the VP and head HR for Glenmark Pharma. Mr. Tripathi, all yours.
Thank you, Professor Gopal, for the kind introduction. It's always good to come back to KIT, to sort of share views with the faculty, the students here. For a few reasons. One, I did my master's from Bhubaneswar, so I have a special relationship with Bhubaneswar, and therefore KIT is in a way special, and to sort of share my views with the students is something that I always look forward to. So every time I get an invitation from Samir, Sonam, and team, I always say yes in the first go, because it gives me a good opportunity to connect with Bhubaneswar again. Having said that, I think the last 8-9 months have been very, very different from what we have ever imagined in our lifetime. Anything that had to do with business continuity planning has gone for a 6 for most corporates, if you will, in India, right? Force majeure is something that we used to write as a clause in all the agreements that we would typically draft, and we never knew that we'd had to sort of undergo that force majeure in this sort of a way that we've sort of experienced in the last 8-9 months. The way that I have seen the industry sort of shift in the last 9-10 months is let's say the first quarter of the year, where no one really had a clue in terms of how to react and respond to the pandemic. We all sort of look very closely into our business to see what is really required in the immediate near term sort of a timeline. Mostly, most businesses that we looked at, which were in the pharmaceutical biotechnology sort of domain, sort of focused on a couple of areas to begin with. One is to sort of make sure that uh, that manufacturing is happening on ground of drugs, and these drugs are actually reaching the demand that is there across the world. Being the pharmacy of the world, I think a lot of Indian pharma companies essentially were focusing A on the manufacturing end and B the supply chain end. I think the supply chain end took a little bit of time to sort of normalize. When we were able to ship stuff out of all the airports, whether it's Mumbai airport, Hyderabad airport, or anywhere else, and then that sort of started to normalize. The second area that a lot of companies sort of focused on was to conserve cash. They realized that if we are able to sort of have cash with us in a very productive manner, we'll be able to last out longer. Right. The third area that everyone sort of focused was on employee safety, health and well-being uh, of our own colleagues across the country or across the world, really. Right. These were the three things that I saw happening as an immediate business reaction in the first quarter or so. Um, Come the second quarter, thi- things started to get a little more clearer. Think in terms of businesses understanding that this is going to be a long-term situation, and it's not going to be something that we will just get away with in a couple of months. The businesses started to now realize that they have to operate and at productive levels, if you will, um, to sort of sustain in this marketplace. So, mind you, all through the demand for pharmaceutical products uh, hadn't really changed across the world. The demand is still continuing. There may be small fluctuations. Let's say the India market would essentially been holding in the months of April, May in terms of your typical chronic segment or other segments. But overall, globally, apart from let's say medical devices and healthcare, in core pharmaceuticals, we never saw a dip in the demand really. So all the more critical to be able to manufacture and supply chain uh, medicines across the world and keep the business going. Uh, I think come to the third quarter, everybody sort of, especially in Glenmark, I would say, everybody sort of uh, accepted the new normal, if you will, right? And that for us, it was a great time around that time because uh, the second quarter we actually ended up, you know, living a dream, if you will, in the pandemic, where we were working on a drug called the favipiravir, Faviflu, in Glenmark, and second quarter was a frenzy in terms of getting the drug out into the market. We had a very unprecedented sort of time in Glenmark during those 3-4 months, where we were the fastest to sort of get Faviflu out into the market. Uh, I could see a lot of meaning, purpose come into play for a lot of our R&D scientists, for a lot of our manufacturing professionals, where we didn't struggle with folks coming into the bench and working, or whether the pandemic could scare them or not. But mind you, most of my scientists came across and said they've you know this is the reason why we went to pharmacy school or a biotech school, that on a day like this or on a crisis like this, when the country does not have a drug to fight with uh, COVID, we in Glenmark as scientists can come in and make it happen. There is no bigger motivating factor. We didn't put out crazy incentives. We didn't put out different compensation programs. But I think the situation, the overall situation, how, the the way that uh, the organization sort of galvanized itself. For us, it was a great time. So riding, piggybacking on the success of Favipiravir launch, Q3, if you ask me, was much easier. We're able to sort of segregate jobs that require uh, not to be in office and jobs that require you to be in bench. And once you've done that, scientists sort of scientists, professionals in the whole biotech pharmaceutical space are very well educated professionals. It doesn't take a long time for us to get our point across, and they appreciating the business of pharmaceuticals really. So overall, if you ask me, this is how I've seen the sort of business and broadly the HR sort of settle in the last nine odd months. Well,
Yes, Dave. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Tripathi. I think you very nicely categorically mentioned that yes, this is why the people join biotechnology and why the scientists working in the pharma industry. This is the basic reason why they join. That in the time of this in need, they can come up with a solution. As we clearly mentioned, Glenmark came up with this Faviflu drug in a very short point of time. And you very rightly mentioned, sir, that yes, manufacturing of drugs cannot be stopped. It's a life-saving thing, and it has to go on. And of course, it went on with the proper planning and everything. It went on. So thank you for very rightly mentioning the viewpoints of Glenmark Pharma in this difficult scenario. Thank you, Mr. Patil. So now I move on to the next speaker, Mr. Saumen Chatterjee. He is a graduate from Xavier Institute of Social Services, and he is an experienced human resource professional with a demonstrated history of working in IT, chemicals, and pharma industries. And currently, he is the Director HR at LifeSciences. Mr. Chatterjee, please. Mr.
Saumen, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Is it audible now?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
please.
sorry for that. So it's my privilege to talk to the students, and in front of the esteemed guests, many of them are my colleagues from Dr. Reddy's. Nice to touch base with them again. Very close friends. They've some great points, what you mentioned. So a lot of the things you have covered already in your discussion and talk. So I will probably touch base with what we are going through in a very nutshell. And one of the important aspect which I can closely relate to in this era is safety, and that too particularly I can realize the importance very closely as I was being associated with DuPont, so-called pioneer in the safety world. Now, in this situation, what what is the role that HR has to play? Is it difficult? I'll rather say we are actually going back to the roots. Now, why I say so? That's simply because if you look at that, we were basically becoming machines or run machines without caring about each other. This pandemic has given us the opportunity to realize the importance of living beings, to realize the importance of our life. As long as HR is able to give this importance and to each and every individual, I think many of the aspects could be taken care of. Let's talk about the first quarter, as Dev sir pointed out very rightly, that yes, first quarter did come as a jolt to me in many aspects. But however, after the first quarter, people started to realize that we need to change towards the reality of human being. As a human being, what we really want happiness. Don't you think that you have realized the importance of being closer to your colleagues and what is the importance of socializing? What is the importance of being closer to your family? In many ways, it has actually proving to be a far more productive new normal than being not so productive. Why? Reason being, number one, as let's talk about few of the industries where you have to go to office. Let's say the manufacturing industries. Let's talk to our scientists. I'll come to the scientists a little while. Let's talk about the manufacturing industry. Now, you cannot do away with the fact that you have to run a reactor. You cannot do away with the fact that you have to mix the chemicals. You cannot do away with the fact that you have to store the chemicals. You have to take the chemicals. You have to put the chemicals in the reactors in Indian circumstances, in Indian manufacturing units. Yes, there are units in China. There are units in Germany where robots are doing the same. So don't you think it, in many ways, we are actually moving towards a direction which is compelling us that we learn a new technique, we move towards. So it has actually paved the way for future, and it is actually going to create many more job opportunities for us. Only thing is we need to reshape ourselves. We need to understand the reality that if we don't upgrade ourselves, we will basically not be more relevant. And why this upgrading is required? That is simply because our, just think to the core, our population is day by day increasing, so demand is increasing. Can you do that much amount of production or so many research by way of conventional thought process, by hard labor? No, you need to, the importance of reskilling is coming into picture. And that is where HR has to play a crucial role. Reskilling, the term was earlier there. It's not a new term, but the importance is realized now. That is the most important thing. Now, what happened in the first quarter? Yeah, it is a relative world. We are saying our productivity is a loss. So be it. It is for everyone. So it has impacted in a neutral way, some higher and some to a higher degree, some to a lower degree, but it has happened to everyone. And world is not absolute, it is relative. That is how it is running as on today. What is important to note is how HR as a function is shaping up. HR as a function not only has to take care of own employees, but HR has a function now has to take care of their family members as well. Now HR has to realize the fact that if we don't take care of the family properly, it is going to impact badly. The importance of safety, it is the function of SHE and its close association with HR. If you don't impose norms and make it a way of life, particularly in the industry that we are in, pharmaceutical industry, see, we are manufacturing such a key ingredient, we are manufacturing such key drugs. one small mistake, and it is going to take lives. It may take lives of many. So that's the importance of safety is now not only in the mind of HR, but probably it has now percolated down to each and every individual. And that is where it, in some way or the other, while HR is making processes or with the help of SHE team or HSE team, what you call it, it has become in some way become easier for HR to say, if you don't do things right to the employees, it is detrimental to you. So somewhere the realization has also come within the employee base, within the humankind. So whether it has become life of HR difficult or easy, that's a question to debate on from the change management perspective. But yes, in the new normal, one important thing, we have realized the importance of work-life balance, or we have realized the importance of life is a part of a work. That is the question mark. Or work is a part of life. Earlier, we were talking about work-life balance. I talk it different and say differently. I say work is a part of a life. Sometimes your work will be high, sometimes your work will be low. You manage your life and you will be happy. So the question of how do you bring happiness to the individual is far more important than work-life balance. It is far more important that delivery not at the cost of life. Delivery is important, but how do you make your processes? That is why all of the HR, all of us, definitely we have been engaged to create some sort or some time or the other. How do you frame a work from home policy? I'm sure all of us have done that. We are providing chairs, we are talking about ergonomics, we are talking about lunch hours, we are talking about everything. So the time bound work is now taking a shape of delivery based organization. Imagine, because of work from home, we have saved a lot of money with respect to infrastructure, right? So this is actually a savings to the organization and a lot of savings, right? So I believe it has thrown more good than the bad. That is where my viewpoints. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. Thank you. And yes, very importantly, very nicely told the importance of being happy and being the human values. Yes, being human is very, very important. And yes, being safety of the employees and the individuals are really, really important. Yes. Thank you for pointing out that, sir. And yes, of course, an important point that you mentioned is just how to meet this ever-increasing demand of the population, scale up or rescale up. Yes, that's a very, very important thing that has come up recently to the minds of HR professionals, to the industry, and of course, our students must be thinking on these lines now. So thank you, sir. Thank you for your views. Now I would like to invite the third speaker, Mr. Srinivasan Pagadala. Mr. Pagadala is an efficient HR leader with over 16 years of talent leadership experience. He has a rich experience of working across the cultures in global project teams and delivering superior business results. Currently, he is the Director HR at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Mr. Srinivasan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gopal. Good afternoon, everybody. I think last few months and the 3 quarters that we have all been witness to a new normal that we are calling. In fact, this new normal has accelerated the change in a matter of weeks. In fact, it was so sudden, as some of us in the panel, including Dave, mentioned, we were not prepared for it. And it happened all of a sudden. It was so fast and furious that it had taken many of us by surprise. And we were responding to it in the first few weeks. And the experiences that I'm going to share and the perspectives are how we have dealt at Dr. Reddy's, especially in the R&D environment. So one of the things that clearly happened, and both speakers have already touched upon the fact that since pharmaceutical industry is an essential services industry, we had to actually continue the shop. So the manufacturing of medicines, supply was pertinent. And that was not only in the domestic world, but it was supposed to also reach all other patients who were in desperate need of these things. And therefore, it was very difficult for the teams to manage and ensure that these supplies are uninterrupted. At the same time, since we were in a world operating just in time, so there was probably not enough on raw materials to actually say that we fulfill the demand for the market. And therefore, it was really tough for the supply chain professionals to demonstrate agility, have those business continuity supplies in place to ensure that the patients' need are met. Through all this, one thing that came out and I really feel proud about is celebrating the employees' resilience. We spoke about the purpose with which all the pharma professionals work. Yeah, that's, I think, given that people who are part of the pharmaceutical industry, they feel great about contributing to the healthcare. And apart from that, the resilience, the way people showed agility was phenomenal. And I can give few examples how that agility was demonstrated by use of digital. One of the things that happens, Gopal, is people have to travel to do technology transfer from one city to other. Now, lockdown, no travel. How do you manage it? That was the time when people started to talk about what's possible. We started to look at the opportunities, possibilities, and people started to say, hey, look, there could be a Google Smart Glass through which I could actually record and transfer the technology out there. So as we speak about that, innovation is actually a mother of necessity. So many of these necessities actually started to bring out newer ways of working. This is just another example. On any other day, if we had told the R&D organization or anybody, they would say, oh, this is not possible, or there are so many reasons why this wouldn't work. So that's how people have actually responded to. Social intimacy, absolutely. I think that is a fabric of our country. So we actually take pride in it, and that's what keeps us going as well. We love to come to work, and we often see that, okay, that's where the energy comes in. But people have started to manage in the new normal with limited or probably no social intimacy, working collaboratively on tools. And that certainly was something that people had to manage by working more smartly. Because when people are there in physical contact, means in social intimacy, things are much different. So during this pandemic, I also witnessed smart working of people. Last but not least, my friend also spoke about, Saumen also spoke about the safety. So the physical and mental health, both were critically important. And in the past, we were actually only looking at the physical health of employees, but this pandemic also forced us to think about the mental health, how employees need to balance their work life, and therefore the work-life integration was becoming important. And I'm glad to say that the way we have supported our employees in pursuit of their professional goals and serving the society, we have been able to take care of their physical and mental health very well. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan. Very nicely pointed out. Yes, necessity is the mother of invention. And yes, of course, in this pandemic, we learned to do things in a different way, and we had to accept, yes, these things can also be done in a different ways. And rightly said, sir. Yes, 1 year back, no, certain things could have been, beyond imagination, that yes, things can be done in different way, but now that has become normal, and yeah, certain things have changed a lot, and we have accepted. Yes, very right pointed out, sir. Yes, sir. And definitely rightly mentioned out, sir. Yes, keeping the supply chain active is very, very important, as mentioned by all the speakers, that yes, pharma industry is linked to the life of the people, and those life-saving drugs and APIs has to move across the country and move across the world. So supply chain is again a very, very important part of the industry which has to be maintained. Very rightly pointed out, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So now I'd like to move to the fourth speaker of the day, Mr. Lakshmipathi Itha. Mr. Lakshmipathi Itha has a proven track record in the field of human resources. He has worked in the reputed companies like Dr. Reddy's Laboratory, Napier Healthcare, Labor, Novartis, Oracle India, and many more. Currently, he is the Senior Director of HR at GVK Biosciences. Mr. Itha.
Yeah, good afternoon all. Thank you so much, Professor Gopal, for introducing me. I think, it makes my life very difficult, when three of the eminent speakers have already given a backdrop. How do I justify myself? But I'll try and do as much as we can. I think, this last 9 months, I mean, precisely the last 3 quarters have really put the entire ecosystem under stress. It has nothing related to the Indian context. I think globally, every individual have gone through a transition, and it forced us the way we live our personal as well as professional lives. Uh, while I think most of us were caught off guard, the key thing or the easy part of this entire transition is uh, from an organization standpoint, the change management is slightly relatively better because people were forced to change their personal behaviors also. So most of the times, what happens is, for organizations to induce change, it takes a lot of time, unless until the individuals, the leaders, the entire ecosystem, there is an acceptance to change, it is very difficult to drive change. The current pandemic has made, or kind of stressed upon a lot of changes in our personal life. And what we are expecting individuals is to replicate the same change what you do in your personal life in office. For example, I go for a grocery shopping. I'm expected to maintain social distance, wear a mask, and then I have to sanitize my hands often, kind of, make sure that I take all the precautions at home. So what am I expected to do in office? The same thing. Now, assuming if this pandemic doesn't exist, and if I'm expecting my organization to behave differently, I know it's very difficult for us to enforce such change management context. So the good part of this entire context is we are expecting individuals to replicate what is happening in their personal life. We are asking them to do the same thing in the professional life. Yes, it does took a hit of revenues in the quarter 1 for most of us, which is the hard fact. But the reality is it took some time for us to convince our employees to come back to industry. Most of them went back to their hometowns, and it kind of put a lot of stress on the teams. We really had to put in a lot of effort to kind of ensure that people come back to workplaces. And there was a lot of pressure from the government ecosystem for pharma companies to operate 24/7. Luckily, despite of lockdown measures, the governments have supported us, with relevant permissions for us to operate. But our employees got scattered across the states, and every state had a different rule. When I used to work, during my, global role, I understand the US operates very differently. Every state has a law. And then for us to kind of create a compliance structure around US, there can't be one unique model which works for all states. So this pandemic, I think, first time I've experienced, how do we get back our workforce back to Hyderabad? We are based out of Hyderabad. And then we have to work with multiple state police departments, the company secretaries of the states, to kind of deal with the compliances of the respective states. But how do I kind of bring back my employees back to workplace? To an extent where we had to kind of give confidence to the families that everything is going to be normal and we will ensure that necessary precaution. That's the trust building exercise that we had to do with all our employees to make sure that we are kind of making everything a safe place to work. One great learning in this journey is external versus internal. Most of the times we wait for something to happen. So when something external happens, it is beyond our control. But what is internal is within our control. So for all the students, especially my suggestion is this is the time where you have to invest in your studies, focus on that. External environment is not in our control. We can't really push the external ecosystem to change. I still remember 2001 is when I passed out from my management institute. That was a great year of recession. I was the first one to be placed in campus, and I was the first one to lose my job in the campus. But did I stop? No. It's a time, it's a phase that we have to kind of pass through. Did all the companies stop with the pandemic? Definitely not. We kind of had to struggle for the first couple of months, to kind of create the trust and bonding with the workforce to make sure they come. The infrastructure was never ready. I can't maintain social distance and then make sure that there is 100% productivity. Customers were behind our life.
Lunch break.
Sorry.
Please go ahead, sir. Sorry for interruption. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So customers were behind our lives, wherein we have to kind of committed to some deliverables we have to deliver. But I think, all in all, did anything happen? No. It's just a phase of life. It's going to be a tough year, for most of the kids in the block. I would say that, stay afloat. Things will come back to normal. I think, we see a lot of progress in the last 3 months. Things are getting back to normal shape. And I'm sure all of us will do well as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshmipathi ji. If Gopal may permit, may I ask a quick question to Lakshmipathi, please?
Yes, please. Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So you did talk about how you manage the employee status and their mental well-being as well. Do you think it was a very crucial time for you to collaborate with different businesses to find new avenues so that you can move forward with the limited resources and the supply chain you had?
Normally, I think we are normally what do you say? We are covered for 6 months. In general, whatever may be the raw material supply that we need to have. I think most of the pharma industry, we do have reserves for 6 months. As long as it is less than 6 months, I think we should be good. The real challenge was only Q1 for us. I think, I don't think so we faced any supply chain issues as such. But I think getting back the manpower, because for us, the industry operates 100%. There's no work from home concept for us. So we are expected to be in, physically in the manufacturing facility or the R&D facilities that we have. So that was a key challenge. But the good part of it is the Q1 learning for us is, there is a tremendous support from the entire management of the business. There was immense amount of collaboration that I've seen between cross-functional teams. I don't think so I have ever experienced such collaborative working between all functions, be it supply chain, be it admin teams, be it HR, be it business heads, reporting managers or managers, people managers, whatever we call. I think there was a tremendous amount of support and understanding that we have got, which has really helped us give that confidence to employees to come back to workplace.
Good. Thank you so much, Lakshmipathi ji. Your call, Gopal.
Yeah, thank you, sir, and thank you, Bhavana, for asking a beautiful question. So yes, sir, I must thank you that you really brought about the point, yes, that 2001 decision time, because our students must be thinking now that, yes, pandemic, whether when we pass out, we get a job or not. So I must thank you for bringing this very important point. And yes, change management, it's very difficult to manage and very difficult to accept. And for example, I have forgot when I had a shaking hand with my colleague, maybe 1 year back or something. And in our cars, the place of water bottle has taken the place of sanitizer. So a lot of things have changed and a lot of things have has become a norm in our life, which you never thought would be. And who knows, this will give us a chance to prepare for us, God forbid, another pandemic. A couple of weeks back, it was in the news that in Republic of Congo, they have found a new pathogen, which has been proven negative for all the available tests in the world, having a similar symptoms to Ebola. So they are calling it as disease X and patient 0. So God forbid, maybe this gives a chance to prepare us, being a biotech professionals and industry professionals, to prepare us for the next pandemic. So with this, I must thank all the speakers for bringing out their views. Now I hand over the stage to my colleague, Dr. Bhavna. And to everyone's information, apart from being a professor and a scientist, she is also an entrepreneur. So Dr. Bhavna Gupta, all yours.
Thank you, Gopal. Thank you, all of you. It was a wonderful event for us. I mean, beside us, we have more than 200 participants, and I can assure you that all of us are completely honored and privileged to hear from you, to learn from you, and to meet you. And I have a quick question. Although the podium is open for the students to ask questions to you, just a quick question to Mr. Dev Tripathy. So, sir, what adaptations and transformations do you think that you have done to mitigate the effects of COVID-19? And do you think there would be any consequences on the ecosystems because of those?
Thank you, Professor Bhavna, for that question. I think first of all, I would say, given that there's a big community of students as part of this particular discussion, I'd say this is a great time for being a biotech student, if you will, right? The way that the country is sort of rallying behind scientists, whether it's be the vaccines that just got approved for emergency use about a week earlier, or being the pharmacy of the world, as they call it, right? In the last 9-10 months, the way that the government has sort of played, the diplomacy is something which is very, very commendable for us as a country. And I say this more because this is all of this adds on to the power and strength to the profession that you are going to enter, right? The other day, I looked at a head of manufacturing of a global pharmaceutical company sort of egging on to tell Europe that they need to have more manufacturing capacity because in the middle of COVID, the supply of uh, paracetamol was something that is in deficit in Europe, and their dependency on India. So uh, both these stories, the story of being the pharmacy of the world and the story of contributing in a significant way onto this whole vaccine program that the world sort of carrying on, of the 13 or 14 programs that are actively going on, at least 2 or 3 are in India, right? Is a great story. Whether this year the placements are great or not, but everything sort of augurs very, very well for you in the profession or the area that you've chosen. That's point number one. Coming specific to your question, from an HR perspective, look, we've done a bunch of things over the last 9 months to sort of stay relevant, stay on course with what the business wants in this COVID situation. But if I were to just tell you 4 or 5 things that have sort of changed for us from an HR perspective in terms of how we are responding to the business and its own success, I would say one is in the whole area of organization design itself, right? Where uh, very clear classifications are happening around jobs, where you are sort of looking at jobs that need you to go to work and jobs that don't need you to go to work, right? And that acceptance is sort of coming in very, very clearly, even in pharmaceutical or biotechnology companies, where you have to be on the bench, or work is not where I go to. That's first sort of a classification that's happening, and people are sort of adapting to working from home and being really productive in that sense. The second area in the whole organization design bucket itself is around the whole culture of whether I am going to be a culture of how much time, how much or how much outcome that I'm seeing. So management by results is an area that is becoming very, very prominent and important as part of the culture that is being driven. And for a lot of the Indian organizations, that's a big challenge actually. When I speak to CHROs, I think a few CHROs sort of say that we missed a few quarters not focusing on this area because this is something that's going to stay in the longer run. So at a strategic level, how do you get the organization to be result driven and get your systems, whether it's the performance management systems or other systems, to sort of be able to deliver that to the organization, right? Gone are the days where you'd probably do a once in a year sort of an appraisal, and how your actual MIS with which you manage the business is sort of changing. So that's the second area in the organization design bucket. The second bucket is this whole gamut of employee experience that's sort of changing. We are seeing an unprecedented sort of collaboration between HR, IT, admin, and health and safety teams, right? To sort of come together to give an experience to employees that is a worthwhile experience really in this pandemic. I mean, and this has been a big eye opener in terms of how these sort of teams have collaborated to come together to give that experience. Um, the third area is surprisingly, this last 9-10 months have been the best times for learning when it comes to organizations, right? People have, I mean, there was a time that people would sort of look at classroom learning, and we'd especially in India, we'd talk about bite-sized learning, on the phone learning, and we still said that, you know, there's some distance to cover to adapt to it, but most organizations, right, in the first quarter or second quarter took a free membership of XYZ learning till they exhausted it, so that you know, learning came alive for us in Glenmark. I mean, that's an area that has sort of moved leaps and bounds in terms of adopting to this whole online learning. You still are sort of grappling with some issues around education, experience, exposure, right? Especially the experience part of it, but at least the exposure and education part of it gets well covered in the learning aspect. The the other area that I see, and there are many, but I'll sort of keep to 3-4 areas now for this discussion. The other area is, you know, there's an additional burden on leaders in terms of how they connect, how they keep their teams motivated, how they are able to sort of look at results, and therefore an additional burden or a challenge, if you will, to HR folks, right? How do they work with leaders in terms of coaching them, in terms of facilitating a great environment for their team, and keeping the leaders focused as much as you know, providing the kind of employee experience that you will to the employees. So this, if you ask me, are four areas. I mean, you could take HR technology as another area, and a couple of other points, but these are 4 core points that I'd like to highlight, Professor Bhavna.
Thank you, Mr. Dev. Actually, it is also difficult for the employees because they are learning and it is a result-oriented learning. So they really have to work hard. Some people who never spent more than 10 hours at home are now spending 24 hours at home. It's extremely difficult. I understand this. Thank you, sir. And another question to Mr. Srinivasan, if he can hear me.
Yes. Yes, Dr.
Yes. So thank you so much. And you rightly pointed out that there is a huge change in the digital transactions. And I somewhere read that India has seen about 700% increase in digital transactions. So it's a huge thing. Now everyone can pay online, can buy online, and you know, we have digitalized everything during these 10 months only, which we could not have thought about if the pandemic was not there. So with respect to biotech industries, what do you think, I mean, what are the key skill sets that should be targeted for better digital adoption with respect to biotech?
Sure. Yeah, in fact, they also spoke about how digital, in fact, has improved the learning opportunities for all the employees. I think that was a welcoming thing. One of the things that I personally believe, Professor Bhavna, is the digital skill sets which are required is about the ability to code, and when we are talking to biotechnology students, the computational biology, computational chemistry that we talk about, these are actually becoming more and more important, where the ability to synthesize the data and bring out meaningful outcomes in a much faster way, so that the success rate predictability is higher. I think that's one data skill set which is becoming extremely important in this new normal digital world. Uh, it is in the area of biological sciences. It is certainly there in the area of chemistry as well, computational chemistry. The second,
So,
yep.
so
Go ahead.
you mean to say, sir, bioinformatics? So they can take the data from the resources, and then they can
Yes.
try to analyze the data, and then they can channelize them for drug discovery or for identifications of potential
Absolutely. That's
hit.
one area. The second one, the way the technology is disrupting the things, and 8 years back when I was with Novartis, we were thinking, how is this possible, when Novartis was collaborating with Google to actually develop smart lens for the glaucoma detection. So it is disrupting very fast. And the reason I bring that example is, again, the power of data and collaboration that some of the speakers also spoke about. So for the student community and for all of us in the profession, I think those siloed functional work is going to disappear. It has probably disappeared in most of the cases, and wherever little is remaining, it is going to disappear much faster. And we would be more a bionic organization where we coexist along with technology. It's not going to be that we are using technology. In fact, technology also is going to probably use a lot of the way we think logically, or the way we actually talk about things. So these are the two things that are going to actually be in the new world, which the students and all of us are grappling with, and probably have to learn fast and fail fast to meet the customer demands.
So artificial intelligence is now coming up. We need
Yeah.
to really work and start learning about it, and analyze the data as much as we can. So we need to learn different computer languages also. So there is a huge shift from a wet lab to a computer environment as well then, right? Thank you, sir. And um, another question to Mr. Chatterjee. So I rightly agree with you, Mr. Chatterjee, that during this pandemic, we have learned, being human, and we also have defined ourselves, or we have learned a new definition of essentials. So few things which were, we forgot that is the only thing essential. We have now learned about them also. So, for example, now in the current scenario, industries are operating with reduced manpower. So we have a reduced crew. So how, as an HR person, would you look into it? And you would not like to have a short of meeting target as well. So with the less number of manpower, do you think these targets are possible, or we need to train the manpower in a way that though they are fewer numbers, still they work better in an limited environment?
Okay, thank you. Well, for me, this very question, are we operating under reduced crew, is a question mark. Now, why I say so? It depends upon the industry in which you are working. It depends upon the role that you are engaged in. Let's take example of certain corporate roles. Let's say talk about finance. Let's talk about corporate communications, right? Do you think are we operating under reduced crew or increased crew? The very question is, earlier the very concept of absenteeism, has absenteeism reduced or has absenteeism increased in these particular functions? Now, you will, if you see a classical trend, current trend, you will see very less number of people are applying for leaves. They are rather because they are working from home many a times. Now let's take the other side of the story. Industries or the functions where you have to be present in laboratories or you have to be present in the manufacturing sites. Now, there comes the question of efficiency versus a number of hours spent, whether it is the volume or number of people, or we have now started focusing on efficiency. Slowly and steadily, if you look into the concept of Japanese concept, you will see they are far more productive. Why? The very fact of discipline is coming into place and people have realized the importance of discipline. Yes, the change is sometimes difficult, but this is inevitable that we need to change. At the same time, I tend to agree to your point as well. Yes, these are the initial days. There were a lot of people who were absent. They are scared that they will not come to manufacturing industries. There are people who have actually absconded. We have to get people as a replacement for that. So the effective, what we called manning percentage, if earlier it was 100%, initial days of pandemic, it did reduce, but at the same time, it was imposed by the government, and also despite being an essential services, demands were initial days, they were slightly less. Again, it has come up like anything. But by the time it has come up, people have realized the importance how to work, importance of the change of effectiveness. So now the OE functions, operational effectiveness function, has got a lot of importance. Now you really understand the importance of Six Sigma. You really understand the importance of discipline. That is where HR, when I say HR is not only the HR function, it's the managers, it's who are actually directly day in, day out dealing with the individual, have to make them realize that efficiency is the key and you have to be disciplined. You have to work in a particular way and you have to eliminate the mudas as much as you can. We struggled initially, but now we think with less manpower, what you are talking about, in certain industry, we will get better productivity. And there are certain industry where we will get more manpower, more man hours to operate on. That's what my response to it.
Thank you, Mr. Saumen Chatterjee. I think from the audience, Ramya had the same question. So one of the questions you already answered. And another question Ramya has is that what kind of initiatives has the industry taken to boost the morale of the employees?
Pardon? Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
So Ramya is asking what kind of initiatives has the industry taken to boost the morale of the employees?
It is simple. We have clearly categorized the functions where we need not to come to the site to work for, and we are facilitating all the equipments or amenities needed to work from home. We have defined clear-cut policies for work from home. For example, the way you are working in office, you need not to work on the same fashion. You need to work meeting based, and there are timing has been defined that you cannot call for a meeting after these particular hours. Otherwise, what happens? Work from home has become far more hectic. People started realizing people are working from home. What's the joy? We can schedule a meeting at 9 o'clock at the night, so it's not that. So we have defined the work from home policies for those people. For people who are working at the site, we have somewhere initially we have currently at LifeSciences, we have reduced the work hour, but at the same time, we have increased the number of days from 5 days to 6 days, right? But we have reduced the work hour. That is one thing that we have done. Point number 2, that we are slowly and steadily moving towards, we are removing the mudas. For example, we are telling our employees that now you can demand for example, gloves. You need gloves. Earlier, if every X number of days or every X number of hours, and the gloves are placed in a particular fashion such that you need not to waste time to get those gloves. Just an example, it's a very simple gloves. You need it to do the experiment, right? What we are saying, now they are far more hygienic and clean. Obviously, that we probably each and every industry is operating the same way. Now they are realizing the importance of hazards. So these are the certain facilities that we have provided, and people have started enjoying it now.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much, Saumenji. There were many questions in the chat box, and I'm thankful to Mr. Itha. I mean, he has already answered most of the questions in the chat box itself. It's so nice of you. Thank you, sir. I now request Sonam Mahapatra to take over, and so that we can conclude on the session.
Yeah, there were a couple of questions. If Dr. Gopal could, just.
I think I've tried to scroll over many of these questions, and most of them have been answered by Lakshmipathi ji. So,
I can talk about one thing for the benefit of people. In fact, one of the interventions that the organizations are doing more is on mindfulness training. Since a lot of people have spoken about how do we manage the work-life integration, how do we come out of stress, I think mindfulness is exercise which is a combination of NLP, yoga, and other things of how do we deal with present, living with fullness. That's something which has happened, and people are benefiting a lot, apart from like several other things which Saumen mentioned, and they are all important and essential. This is something that we at Dr. Reddy's are doing for the employees and for families who could actually join those sessions as well. Thank you, Professor Bhavna.
If Bhavna allows me, can I ask one question?
Yes, completely. Please, Gopal, go ahead.
This question is, open to all the delegates. So basically, usually to come up with a vaccine, it takes decades of research and a lot of clinical trials. It takes a lot of time. But what we saw in case of this COVID coronavirus, like whatever vaccine you name, BioNTech or Covaxin or whatever, the research and the clinical trial was done in a time of less than a year. And already in the Europe, we are seeing some side effects and all. So the question would be, is the industry prepared for another wave to face that, how to deal with these side effects or allergies what is coming? So how would the industry will deal with these kind of problems coming into that? So.
Okay, I'll answer it a little differently, since the session is being recorded, it's a tricky question. But let's say there is a health scenario in the family, and then someone is hospitalized in the family, and I need 10 lakhs, right? What do I do? I need to go and get the cash, even if it is at an interest of 10%, or even at an interest of 20%, I still have to go get the cash. I hope this answers the question. So it's a tricky question, so I don't think so. If other panel members would volunteer to answer to that question, let them do that. I think we have to have some faith, there is a context of science behind it. Yeah, it has been fast-tracked, but at desperate times, desperate measures are required. And we have to have the trust in the scientist community, and then we need to respect them for what they are. I think, as I said, they've also emphasized on the amount of collaboration that has happened internally. At the size of our organizations, if we are able to collaborate well, I'm assuming the scientific community also has collaborated well. It's just that we don't get to know about it. And honestly speaking, I did speak to a couple of international scientists working for these organizations, and then they seem to be fairly confident about it.
Completely agree with you, sir. Just the time, just that measures. Yes. I think over to you, Vahana.
Well, Gopal, just to add on to what Lakshmi was saying, right? Uh, if you track how drug development, especially, has sort of emerged in the last, decade, especially in the area of oncology, right? Whether it's the FDA or any of the other regulatory authorities, right? Fast track approvals, you know, uh, whether it is on phase 2 or phase phase 3 data, is not new, if you really ask me, right? Especially in the therapy area of oncology, where unmet need is so much that any time that you get any new technology or platform that is showing good results to the clinical endpoints, right? The FDA has, or I'm saying FDA as a representation, right? Or any regulatory authority really has sort of taken that leap of faith towards patients who are probably at the last stage of their life or otherwise, right? But having said that, I think what I without being a scientist, right, what one can sort of see from a distance is that there is a lot of data and preparedness by different regulatory authorities both ways, right? Especially when MHRA sort of approved one of the vaccines. So there's a fair amount of preparation both ends, and everyone is wanting to try and do what is best to the scientific knowledge that exists today. And I think that's where we are, right? I remember when hydroxychloroquine was the drug 8 months back, and then we sort of got wiser from there, and then we moved on. So uh, this is our reality, really, right? And the best example that I can think of is drug approvals in the oncology area, where fast tracking is probably a norm. Yeah.
So I have another question from students' perspective. So now the government has started unlocking slowly and slowly. So do you all think that the industry is ready to open up to hire students and to, take them? And if yes, then what would be your target areas of specific, you know, um, expertise, or what should be the student, when the student comes to you, what he or she should have learned, and, what are your expectations? And is it only that the pharmaceutical students, the students who have learned pharmacy should be absorbable, or even the biotech students are capable enough?
Well, to answer this question, see, it has actually not changed. From the students, we don't expect them to have a lot of experience in the specific fields. If there is an opening in a specific field, with respect to the similar field, if they have done their studies, we expect them to know the theories and bit of application that they have studied during course, during their project works. As long as they show or demonstrate applied theory. When I say applied theory, in the sense whatever they have studied, they are at least able to think how to apply them in which circumstances. Their approach is right. The industry is ready to accept any freshers, whether it is today or probably it is going to increase further. That is what my response to be.
Thank you so much, Saumenji. It's
Professor
extremely...
Bhavna, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So in fact, from our side also, yeah, we have been hiring not only in the pharma space. In fact, we have honored all the PPOs and the internships that we have had last year, and in fact, we probably have doubled the freshers hiring, so to say, in the space of pharmaceutical sciences, or even in the chemical technology areas that we have spoken about, who could be part of this conversation today. In terms of skills, certainly one thing that clearly comes out is The new normal is going to actually pose different challenges to the students, but it is the same for even those who are working. So those challenges are going to not be specific to just the students alone, but rather to everybody on this call included. And therefore, we are all going to deal with it.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much, sir. It was extremely motivating because we have more than 100 students as participants in this webinar. And I'm extremely thankful to all of you. And as I said, it was an extreme honor to be with you, to hear from you, and to really, really learn from you. Thank you so much for joining us. And I request Sonam to take over from here. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. This was indeed a very great, kind of an engaging session. And I would sincerely like to thank all the panelists for their valuable opinions and views on the topic and for giving your precious time. And I strongly hope that we can engage with all of you again in the near future. And I would also like to thank Dr. Sanjay Muthal, Dr. Patnaik, and Dr. Mahanti for their valuable time, and our moderators, Dr. Bhavna and Dr. Chaudhary, for the time and engagement for moderating this session so well. Also, heartfelt gratitude goes out to the organizing team, Dr. Bhavani Mohanty and Mr. Ashish Kakre, for helping us out through and through. And last but not the least, I would like to thank entire corporate relations team and School of Biotechnology for the valuable support. Hopefully, we shall be meeting again soon in real life or virtually. And till then, stay safe and take care. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Stay safe.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Pleasure.
Thank you.